Welcome to vShips. I'm Leanne Taylor Knight with the DeBruce Foundation, and it is my pleasure to welcome each of you with us today. I am on the edge of my seat to introduce you to this outstanding group of panelists we have here today. But first, let's do a few housekeeping items. We want for this to be an open dialogue, so we encourage you to open the chat on the right-hand side of your screen and make sure that you share questions, thoughts, reactions as we go today. Also, if you'll make sure that you send that to all participants, our team will be able to field those and help us throughout the day. If you are having any questions or technical difficulties, that's the other place to put these. Let's kick it off with a poll. We'd like to know a little bit about who you are. So, start with, where are you on your virtual internship journey? You're going to get to hear a little bit from our panelists today. We're kind of wondering who's out there and where are you? Have you not started yet? Are you having a few conversations? Are you an expert that we need to watch and see what you are doing too? Just let us know who you are, where you are on that virtual journey, so our panelists will know a little bit about you too. Again, if you have any connection issues while you're here today, make sure that you put that to all participants in the chat function, and we will take a look. Oh, it looks like we have a lot of people here today who have just started to have those conversations. Well, you are in the right place, because what that means is we've got some of these experts that are already out here and doing it, but we believe we're all in this learning together. That was one of the things the panelists said that they were most excited about today, is to actually get to learn from one another and from what you guys have to share too. So thanks for being with us. You might wonder, why does the DeBruce Foundation care about virtual internships? Why do an entire initiative around vShips? Well, we started to notice, as probably the rest of you did, that there were a lot fewer internships in May of 2020 than 2019. To be exact, there were 49% fewer across the nation being offered. And 75% of our college students graduating from college had their plans disrupted. So knowing that internships are a really critical way for individuals to learn about opportunities and careers and to build their skills, as well as for industry to get a look at and be able to recruit from the talent that we have all across the country and the world, we know that internships are super important. So we said, we've got to do something about this. We stood up some of our own virtual internships, and we funded some others to happen. But as we were doing that, others across the country have been doing that too. And so it's really our pleasure to be able to have you all be a part of this vShips initiative. Let's give a big welcome to today's panelist. I'll just let you know that these individuals and their companies are setting the pace for virtual internships here in our country. And even today, you'll get a hint of across the world. They're going to each take an opportunity to share their name, title, a little bit about their organization and their organization's journey. They'll also make sure to tell you where they're sitting today while we're all virtually communing. So let's get it started. I believe, Colby, you're first up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colby Kaufman, and I'm a senior recruiter and the co-chair of our internship program. Coming to you live from my dining room table instead of my lush cubicle in downtown Kansas City. I work at Evergy, which is the electric utility formed from the merger of Kansas City Power and Light and Westar Energy. We have around 5,500 employees and serve 1.6 million customers in Kansas and Missouri. So let's get into this virtual internship journey. So our journey began in early April this year. Our offices closed mid-March, and by early April, we knew that we needed to start coming up with a plan and decision points to determine if we would simply delay the start of our summer interns, hold a mini internship, shift to fully virtual, or cancel the program. After lots of conversations and input from our executive team, we decided to move forward with a fully virtual program that would span 10 weeks for 82 students, many of which had accepted our offer for the summer 2020 program in the fall of 2019. And so without our internship moving forward, they'd be left without any other options, potentially altering their career trajectory. And moving to this format, we wanted to keep the core elements in place from our traditional in-person programming: meaningful work, exposure to the utility industry, professional development, and networking opportunities. Keenly aware that students may be wary of sitting in front of a computer all day after having their classes moved online for the spring semester. And so we are really strategic in how we schedule the events for the program to keep a balance between the work that they were hired to do and the programming that we wanted to present to them. We called our program Evergy University and arranged the programming similar to a university experience by identifying what events would be required or core to their experience, what events would be required by their department, and the elective courses that were optional to attend. Our goal was to make sure that the students left the summer with us feeling like they had an experience and not just a bunch of random meetings that they were forced to attend. At Evergy, our core value is people first, and with that in mind, we designed the program focusing on relationships, the relationship that the student had with their intern peers, their team, and with Evergy. One key way we did this was that we broke all the students into small interdisciplinary teams and assigned a recent intern to full-time hire to be their mentor in that group. These small groups then met weekly throughout the program to dive deeper into topics, review virtual tours to learn about all aspects that make our utility work, and where they were also a resource for any issues the interns may be having. We also worked with our Director of Diversity and Inclusion and held a 3-part lab where the students worked in groups on a project together around a DE&I topic. This was a great opportunity for students to meet additional interns and also have great conversations surrounding DE&I. A silver lining to the virtual program was access to our executives, since they were at home too. We created a series called Evergy 101, and various executives spoke on our mission, vision, and values and had opportunities to have direct contact with the students and the executives. We also offered enhanced professional development opportunities for the students, including Clifton Strengths Finder and seminars on presentation skills, time management, and leadership mindsets. A few final points on logistics that help make our program go well. We created an intern-specific team through our Microsoft Teams software to be a one-stop shop for information and communication. And for orientation, we held a syllabus week instead of an orientation day to have a meeting every day to give the students the information over a longer period of time and have them look forward to one meeting a day that they knew what would be happening. And I'd be remiss not to call out the teamwork from our 82 hiring managers that made the program a success. While my team prepared the programming, they had to shift while working remotely themselves to figure out how to provide meaningful work and how they would train the students and keep them engaged throughout the summer. We learned a lot this summer and will take lots of these elements of our virtual program into future in-person programming. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our next panelist, Beth Barakat.
Thanks, Colby. My name is Beth Barakat. As Colby said, I work for PwC in our talent acquisition programs team, which is national. PwC, what is this? What do we do? We focus on assurance, tax, and consulting services. We've got about 55,000 partners and staff across the US. This summer, we welcomed 3,600 interns. We have a winter, summer, and a slightly smaller fall internship. But as we all know, COVID drastically affected our summer internship program. And historically, since the beginning of recruiting time, our internship has been a pipeline to our business. So when COVID hit, we had a big decision to make. What are we going to do? Are we going to switch to virtual? Are we going to just cancel the internship, give them offers, and just hope that they like us enough to come back? There's a multitude of options that we went through, but we decided to lead with care. And we made, it wasn't necessarily the easy decision, but it was the right thing to do. So we stuck to our commitment that we had made to all 3,600 students, and we still held our internship. We shortened the time frame slightly, and we made it all virtual, given safety first for all of our people. And And ultimately, we'll get into details throughout the panel of how we did that and the different, nuances, the things we ran into. But I think the important piece that I want to point out about what we did with our decision and when we communicated it to the students was that we decided to extend full-time offers to the interns pre-internship. Typically, we do that at the end of their internship upon successful completion. But we thought this year, let's take that stress off their back. The internship's going to be shortened. Let's just extend that offer. They know that they have a full-time job after graduation. It's in their hands, in their inbox. And we thought, just given the current environment, that again was the right thing to do. So with that, I will pass it to Kevin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. I am Director of Operations and Sales Partnerships with Bottle Learning. We are a gamified learning platform. We currently focus on K-6 levels of math education, but we do plan to expand our offerings to cover more subject and topics down the line. That said, our program, it's a video game. A lot of our team members happen to be avid video gamers. I myself am one. I stream video games when I have some time. So we like to keep it fun, and we really believe in the environment of the virtual space, and I think there's a lot of positivity that can happen there. I think a lot of people debate whether a video game is good for your kids or not. Like, we're not going to get into that today, but the point is you can actually do something good with it. I promise you. I turned out just fine. And that said, our learning platform is, again, it's a video game that allows students to really enjoy, right? Be positively engaged with the subject, so that it's not a dread to go into a program and just answer questions. We actually try to make it fun. At the same time, we still warranty that it is going to be high quality educational content, whether it's a practice assessment or it's an instructional content. We take great care in making sure that it is also going to produce the academic results that we want to see in the children. And, with the COVID-19 pandemic that's hitting right now, one of the biggest impacts, other than the health repercussions, obviously is actually on our younger generation. And we'll get into the interns and young professional aspect later on. But with Bottle, we understand that, a lot of students right now are, facing very unprecedented obstacles right now. Their schools are getting shut down. And it's not just them, it's you. Some of you might be parents and you might be pulling your hair trying to figure out what to do with your kids while you're working from home and they're also at home. I mean, I don't have a kid yet, but I have a cat, and my cat demands my attention all the time, and it's stressing me out, honestly. But that said, we want to help with that. And we create this program to really allow for your kids to have a productive time while still having fun. And at the time when there's a lot of trepidation and fear out there, it's very important to induce positivity and smile and cheer in the day-to-day as well. And that's what we do. We make the game for the kids, and we also create platforms with helpful tools and resources really that would benefit the educators as well. Whether it's for teachers or parents, you're going to be able to easily digest a lot of data and trends and statistics that we present to you in terms of understanding where's their learning gap for your kids, and each specific individual student's or a child performance will be analyzed, and you can easily know, okay, this is where they need help. And based on that, they can then, move on to create a curated, specialized strategy on each specific child. So that said, again, we believe fully in the idea of virtual learning environment, and there's no reason to not implement that within our business model as well. In fact, our executive team right now is all over the place. I am based in New Jersey. Our headquarters with our co-founders are based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have a CTO who's based in Hong Kong, and a lot of our team members are also spread all over the world, really. So there's no reason to not extend, the same type of opportunity to our interns. We recently implemented a very structured program that would allow for our interns to be participating from wherever they are. So this benefits both the company, but also, the participants. From the company side, we are basically tapping into the global talent pool. We are challenging ourselves to be open-minded at this point by, interviewing so many different people from different walks of life and having them join our team. So that has been very beneficial for us because it helps keep us creative, it helps keep us driven, and provides us with multiple perspectives we never thought of before as we drive forward to achieve our mission. And for the participants, we're flexible, right? We're trying to create an environment that's a little bit low stress for them. And, we accommodate, we still create a sense of accountability and a structure for them to be professional and to actually hone their craft. But at the same time, they have opportunities as well that they would not have if they have to come in and commute every day to the same place. And so it's a win-win situation. And I would love to talk more about this later on. But yeah, excited to be a part of this panel. And I'm going to pass it on to Rebecca.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Jalanik. I'm a vice president with Fleishman Hillard. Fleishman Hillard is one of the world's largest communications agencies. We have about 80 offices in 30 countries. We are headquartered here in St. Louis, where I am sitting today. We have interns in all of those offices across the country. Those sessions may vary, but in our St. Louis headquarters office, which is our largest program, we have interns year-round. We typically have them in a spring, summer, and fall session. Like many of you, we were in the midst of planning for our summer session when COVID really hit hard. Typically, our spring session goes from Martin Luther King Day to Memorial Day, our summer session running from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then, of course, fall from Labor Day to MLK. It's cyclical. I always communicate to our interns that the fact that we have you year-round really illustrates how much we rely on our interns to get our work done. We can't do it without you. We always need to have someone supporting us and providing that client work and that counsel. We had just really gotten into the process of interviewing for summer of 2020. We had done about a first round interviews. A handful of our interns actually got to see the office in person, which I woefully miss. And then when we first came home, I think everyone was uncertain of how long this would last exactly. So we kept on, finished a lot of those interviews remotely and via WebEx and other video resources. And we'd gotten to the point where we had finalized kind of our slate, our selections for summer prior to making offers, when across our agency and across Omnicom, our holding company, it was then directed that we needed to put a pause and cancel all summer internships. So as Leanne mentioned at the top, we were one of those 49 percenters that had to take a step back from our programs this summer. But we knew we had a crop of talented candidates that we wanted to bring on board at some point. It was just a matter of when. When are we going to be back in the office? Because I think part of us for a long time thought, okay, well, when we get back in the office, we'll just pick this back up. But I think the longer this all went on, we knew, okay, we're not going to be back anytime soon. We need to adjust. Meanwhile, our spring interns who had started in January had been in the office for about a couple of months, and then they shifted home along with us. So when we made the decision to pause on our summer program, that allowed us to then extend our internships for our spring session candidates. So they were able to stay on with us throughout the summer. Of course, a lot of them, it is an internship, so they're seeking those full-time opportunities, especially when we're at a little bit of a pause point. A lot of us in communications and consulting were kind of waiting to see how the heck this was impacting the business overall as you look at 2020 as a whole. So let's get back to those summer candidates we had that we were trying to keep connected, engaged, because we want to bring them on board eventually. We were keeping them updated with monthly emails from myself as the lead internship coordinator for our St. Louis office and my co-leader, my deputy, just not only telling them what's going on in the office with COVID and reopening plans and some of the safety measures being done, but also keeping them informed on our business. What were some of the great new business wins? What's some of the great client work that we're doing? Just so they feel connected to us, even though we aren't having a session currently. Then with a lot of persistence, regularly communicating with office leadership and leadership in the various business streams so we know where work is going, we were successfully able to bring on our interns virtually last month in August. A much smaller class than we typically would have for our fall session, but really getting to kick it off in a virtual way and transitioning, embracing this as much as we overuse the term new normal and shift to that virtual model. So that similar to how Colby described it, instead of doing kind of an intense onboarding, we're able to stretch that out over a few days with hour-long sessions as part of that virtual onboarding, and then be really lock in step with them as they've gotten onboarded completely virtually. Some of them never seeing our office, but really working hard to make sure they feel connected to us, the business, even though we don't have that brick and mortar experience. So with that, I feel like a lot of us have talked about what it's like hosting an internship program or doing a virtual internship program, I'm really excited that I get to kick it to someone who has experienced and is experiencing this firsthand, Selena Hunter.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Selena Hunter, and I am a virtual fellow with Linton Associates, and we are a strategic consulting and public relations firm. So I actually began my virtual internship journey at 19 years old, and I started it with a nonprofit called Six Cells based in the Chicagoland area. So I worked remotely from Columbia, Missouri, while attending school at the University of Missouri. So as you can probably imagine, going into a virtual internship was pretty scary at 19 years old. I questioned just a lot about my ability in general, like questions kind of like, am I mature enough for this role? Am I going to be able to work independently outside of an office? Will I become overwhelmed with school and the work that I have to do for the organization? So fast forward to now, I graduated in May with my bachelor's of journalism with an emphasis in strategic communications. And I began a paid fellowship working with Linton Associates, which is based in St. Louis, Missouri. And I work from my hometown in Kansas City, Missouri. So kind of like Kevin mentioned earlier, I was one of those college students that just kind of had my world rocked completely when we were hit with this pandemic. I had plans that were canceled, but I'm so blessed that I had this opportunity to become a virtual fellow with Linton Associates. So taking on a virtual role at 22 years old and being a college graduate, I knew that I was a lot better prepared for this role. But it wasn't necessarily that I was prepared because I was more mature. I was just prepared because I've had those past experiences and I was able to take the skills and everything that I learned from my past experience into this current experience that I'm having. So I knew I could do the role and do everything that was expected of me with this role. So to this day, I believe that these have been the most beneficial experiences of my college career. I've been able to learn skills that not only translated into other jobs, but that also helped me go through school and finish up college. So skills like time management, project management, effective communication, organizational skills, all that good stuff. And these skills not only help me to be a better professional, but they have also helped me to, like I said, help me with school and be a better leader in my class projects. So, as you can imagine, I was actually going through my capstone course when the pandemic hit. So I was in charge of leading a team of 7 people in our student-ran ad agency. And so, as you can imagine, having the experience of working virtually, those skills came in handy when I had to lead that team of 7 virtually during that pandemic. And so I would like to say, like, these career experiences are so important and so beneficial to high school and college students because you're able to learn a lot about yourself as a worker and your working style when you have no choice but to work independently and without on-site supervision. So when you look back on these experiences, you're able to reflect and answer questions like, am I a good project manager? Am I as organized as I thought I was prior to going into this role? Am I truly able to work efficiently and effectively without the supervision of a manager? Just answer those key questions like that. And then you're able just to learn important skills early on in your career that help you to become a valuable asset to any company you go to work for later in your career. So I really applaud the other panelists and their companies for branching out these experiences to college students like myself. Like I was in May, just kind of didn't know what I was going to do, what the journey was going to take me on. So thank you guys for having me today. And I'm really excited to share the insights as a virtual fellow.
Thank you, Selena, and all the rest of the panelists. Now you can see why I was so excited to introduce you to them today, right? So now we're going to throw up another poll so we can get to know, again, a little bit more about you all. We're just kind of wondering, why did you decide to attend this today? And so, it might be that you're interested in learning how to create one from scratch. It might be that you're trying to think of ways to improve virtual internships that you already have going. It could be that you yourself are just looking also to find an internship. So we're really or some other ideas. So take a moment to do the poll that is out there now. And also a couple of other things for you to do. It's a great time for you to start lighting up the chat. We are actually going to try to cover some questions around onboarding and orientation, daily management and accountability, and recruitment. So we have some structured questions that we're going to try to hit into those topics, but we really want to hear from you in the chat. We know that this is a co-learning space, and we're all here to learn today. Again, with your thoughts, your reactions, the questions that you have. Make sure that you throw those over there in the chat too. All right, so it looks like we have a lot of folks. Is it coming in wanting to advance virtual internships maybe that you already have? So, or advance an internship that you have into this space. So really glad to have you guys. All right, so thanks for completing that poll. And we're just going to jump right in with onboarding and orientation. I really appreciated the panelists started to tee into that. And Beth, you're first at bat here with the question of how did you get started, just go about onboarding and orienting these virtual interns, Beth?
This is a good question. As I'm sure all the panelists agree that onboarding is incredibly important, and especially in a world where you're moving to virtual, where interns are literally at home by themselves. So I'll first start off by saying that we didn't change our content. We just really changed the way we delivered it. So we looked at overall high messages. What do we want to deliver to them? What is the right way to do it and when? Because normally in a live session, you can likely deliver a lot more information and it's absorbed because they have their peers next to them. They have other recruiters in the room, other people presenting. So we changed that focus a little bit. So just to give you an example, we took some larger, important messages that are a bit more general and put them in like smaller, digestible podcasts, because we know that that's very, it's a preference of this generation. Then we took content that usually generates a lot of questions, and we delivered those in small group, like live, but virtual groups. So for instance, I sit in Chicago. So I would deliver it to a small group of Chicago interns. So if they had a question about the office, I've been in the office for several years, I can answer it, right? So we kind of divvied it up by that. And then we also had like a large plenary session with leadership. So to welcome them and reinforce, we're all in this together. The other thing that we added in was, how are we going to communicate to all of these interns what they're doing? And mind you, we had a time zone issue too. We had interns across the country. So we had to think through, which was probably my least favorite aspect, because we had to think through how this puzzle was going to look. But one thing that we did do was create an app, and the app distributed their schedule. So everybody could go to the app and look and see what their schedule was, but they could also interact with each other from day one. They could network, they could see what other interns are from their school, what other ones sit in their general region, even outside of their market or office, their line of service. There was an easy way, and we all know that this generation, and even I would say myself too, an app is easy to use. And so we thought by introducing that on day one, that would really make them feel welcome and they could get a lot of information at their own pace. And that proved to be a great way to deliver that for us. It was very successful.
Thanks, Beth. I know everybody's like, I want to see that app now. I know that's what our audience is saying. So, Kevin, you're kind of a pro at this. Call out for us, what's the biggest challenge in onboarding or orienting virtual interns?
Yeah, I mean, Beth kind of touched on it. Like, it's simple, right? But like the time zone difference is just one thing that we had to figure out in the beginning. Again, we're actually happy, like I said, to tap into such a diverse talent from all over the place. But at the end of the day, when we get to brass tack, like we still got to get the details right and the logistics right. So with us, we create a system where we make sure that like whoever wants to be a part of this, like it's a give and take, right? We're giving you an opportunity. We expect you to also be responsible. And we set up a structure where, okay, tell us a little bit about your schedule. What what's your time commitment is going to be like, right? And we get that out of the way since the very beginning. If you're a student currently, what's your class load looking like, right? What are some of the days that we can expect to be able to communicate with you instantly, and like you can reply to us right away? And that's, that's important. We make that as a part of, the agreement that we have in the beginning and a conversation in the beginning. We make sure that we know, okay, so this person has classes on Mondays and Fridays. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are probably the best. Okay. We do set a minimum time commitment within the week in terms of like how many hours we expect you to approximately spend on the internship program, but we try to be flexible. And at the end of the day, it's results driven, right? As long as you get your task done, like, it doesn't matter as much like how many hours you're actually spending. That said, by having kind of this conversation up front and transparently and laying out the expectations very clearly, like we're able to get that information. And then when we onboard someone else who's going to be on the same team with that person, we kind of like make sure that the schedule is going to align. And another thing that we do is that we make sure that for all our interns, like there's going to be that one day within the week that we know everyone is going to be there, right? And the important part about this, because again, with the spirit of transparency and just open communication that is going to be valuable for any businesses out there, we want to make sure that there are going to be times where we sync up just the whole team, right? The executive team is going to be there, the interns are going to be there, all team members are going to be there. And so we just got to make sure, okay, guys, what is like the one time slot within the week? You got to be there ready to participate in this so that we can share information, we can update each other, and also give some bonding time between us. Like we don't want to just see a screen with a person in there and not know who that person is, despite the fact that we're working with them. So it was a challenge in terms of like managing the logistics, but at the end of the day, we just kind of go back to the basics in terms of like, okay, what are good business practices, and also just what are good interpersonal communication tactics, right? When you try to figure out plans with your friends, for example, you just get together and tell everyone, okay, this is what my schedule looks like, this is what's going to work. And then we kind of try to frame that around, everyone's, accommodation needs, basically, because we understand it's a tough time for a lot of people. We don't want to impose restrictions or requirement. Obviously, again, we lay out the expectations for professionalism, for results to be driven, in a way that is effective and still high quality. But at the end of the day, how you get there, let's work together, let's be flexible. And, for me, as one of the, the direct supervisors for the interns, I need to make some sacrifices too. And that's okay. And that kind of like tests our leadership capability as well as an organization. There's going to be time when it's a little later for me, and because someone else in the West Coast, they just, it's still quite early for them. Then yeah, I'll make some accommodation, right? At the end of the day, it's an act of balancing that, and we figure out eventually that as long as you're open, you're communicating openly, like we can figure it out.
Thank you, Kevin. I think that back to the basics, do what you do well, and just think about what works in business. You just have to translate it into that virtual environment. Of course, Colby, that's easier said than done. So at Evergy, what would you call out what would you do differently from what you did with onboarding and orienting?
Well, the first thing, I'd start working on it on March 16th, the first Monday that we were home, instead of kind of waiting until we knew that we were going to be going in this direction. Those extra couple of weeks would have been awesome for planning, but we don't have that luxury. In reality, the biggest hurdle we had with onboarding was the equipment deployment. So getting computers and monitors and keyboards to the students and making sure that they had everything that they needed to be successful in a virtual internship was our biggest challenge. So that's not normally in the talent acquisition arena. And so having to kind of quarterback that to make sure it happens, because it's kind of hard to have a virtual internship without a computer. So we had lots of students who no longer relocated to Kansas or Missouri. So we had to ship equipment, making sure that they had the access and how everything would go smoothly once they received that shipment. And then also for those local students, having to deploy that equipment safely during a pandemic. So asking students to come from the comfort of their home where they're safe and come in to pick up equipment was also something that we had to coordinate. So being as safe as possible. So there was a lot of challenges with the logistics. So definitely would make some changes in that arena.
Sure, we live and we learn, but I'm just going to applaud Evergy and those of you on the panel today, or those of you out there who are doing this, for recognizing that the company has a responsibility to think about how you get that technology to those interns, and that you really make that on-ramp and make that accessible for them to be able to work virtually. So I applaud Evergy for doing that. So Rebecca, usually when we hit a challenge, there's usually also a silver lining that comes with trying something new. What did you guys start to learn at Fleishman Hillard might be silver linings with virtual internships?
Yeah, there was a couple. I'm chuckling because I relate to Colby's issue so much. I remember we had specifically put like our training focused on like technology and using our network drives towards the end of the week, because you didn't know if the equipment and the laptops were going to show up on time. Like that was such a challenge. But yes, you're right, Liam. There absolutely were some silver linings. As Beth alluded to earlier, I think if you don't have a well-organized onboarding process, this just puts a spotlight right on it, because you need to have some sort of structure and organization to it in this virtual environment. If you had that structure to begin with, it's a lot easier to create the roadmap for that onboarding virtually. But if you typically just kind of had your interns show up and maybe meet with a few project supervisors and kind of just learn by being in the office, you're going to find a lot of gaps in a virtual internship environment. So if you don't have that structure already for onboarding, you're going to need to create it. And I would say, a silver lining for us, frankly, was flexibility that we've all found in this virtual environment. Like as I alluded to earlier, typically we have a really condensed kind of 2-day immersion session where we do have that structured onboarding. But we're not tied to that in this environment. And plus we know that, 2 full days in front of your computer isn't fun for anybody. So having the flexibility to spread our onboarding out over a week and having kind of hour-long lunch sessions, that flexibility actually allowed us to start onboarding some of our interns who are wrapping up other endeavors where, people were really eager to bring these interns on board at that point. We've been waiting, months, but they had kind of maybe taken other positions that they wanted to make sure they gave full 2 weeks notice, but we were able to invite them to lunchtime onboarding sessions. While some interns started on that Monday, they were able to still start their onboarding, and just having that flexibility virtually that we would never have had in an in-person environment.
Thank you. It sounds like there is a theme that we're hearing there, right? Of this idea of chunking the onboarding and the orientation experience. And so, Selena, you've done this not once, but you've done this twice and onboarded or been oriented to a virtual experience like this. So, hey, from your perspective, tell us what works well, what doesn't work well, what have been good experiences and not so good experiences, so we can learn from those. Selena.
Yeah, I'm actually fortunate that I can't say that I've had a bad experience, but I know especially in this current role that I'm in, it's definitely it was a day-by-day process for sure. And when I started, my manager was very transparent and honest about the fact that this was going to be a new process and experience for everyone involved, because this was the first summer that they welcomed fellows into the company virtually, actually. So it's really dynamic, meaning we would try a process, and if that didn't work, we would try something else. But overall, the onboarding experience went pretty smoothly, and I like to just attribute that to the open and honest conversations between me and my manager, but then also how willing everyone on our team was willing to help to make that transition easier. So from day one, I knew that I could call on anyone on the team with any questions or concerns or doubts, and they would be there to pretty much just talk it out with us. And then one of my favorite things about my onboarding experience was when my manager had me and Natalie, the other fellow that I work with, schedule 30-minute get to know you meetings with the rest of our team members. And it was nice to have that time to get to know the team on a personal level, especially because we weren't going to be able to meet face to face. But even though we haven't had that luxury, I still feel connected to my team members, and that just made the virtual work environment just that much more comfortable.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think that idea of, we're used to walking them around to offices and letting them ping pong. I mean, that doesn't happen. And so you have to structure that intentionally. And I think that's a nice segue also then into the next kind of topic of the day that we're going to hit is around, that daily management and accountability. And Kevin, man, I'm coming back to you because you guys seem like you give a lot of opportunity for the interns to tell you what they want to do, the times, the days that they will be available and they want to work. And I'm just really wondering, so then what do you have to do to manage that? And how do you ensure accountability, Kevin, in that kind of when you start from that place?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, the one thing I want to mention is that when we approach our internship program and how we deal with the interns, we don't treat them as just interns, right? I actually make it very clear in my first conversation with them that like, yeah, your title officially might be an intern, but I want to see you taking up the responsibility and ownership of, consider yourself a project manager. Like whatever task I'm given to you, that's within your authority, that's within your purview. I am going to be someone that you're going to leverage as a resource. I'm going to be someone who's going to give you some clarification, information, and resources for you to be able to undergo your task. But at the end and I'm going to review your work, obviously, and give you feedback to be better. But at the end of the day, you're executing, you're managing your project. And that kind of builds already a psychological sense within themselves that, okay, I'm owning this. So that helps, even though that I know that I might have to juggle this with my classes, or like they might already have a part-time job or something else. They know that they're going to be able to take this seriously. And like I said before, like we are trying to be flexible, but we also still expect results to be, yielded at the end of the day. So along with that, we do provide them with some structure and, framework to work within. So for example, like within the beginning of the week, I always make it a point for every direct supervisor who's working with interns to have a check-in with your intern, right? It's a simple, hey, let's talk about what our week is going to look like. Let's talk about, what are the different tasks that we each are working on? What's our bandwidth looking like? Did something come up that, you didn't expect before? Like, for example, oh man, I all of a sudden have a pop quiz I need to study for, or like a midterm I have to study for, right? And that way, everyone, again, it's transparent. Everyone knows. Me as their manager, as a supervisor, would know also, okay, this is what I can expect from my interns within this week. And they also know from each other, okay, like I can expect you, for example, if they need to work on something together, then they know, okay, Tuesday is going to be the best day for us. And then they can do that, right? So from my end, I do make sure that I give them that face time with me and with anyone else that they might need to get resources from. And we tend to do that, again, at the beginning of the week to set them up for the week, set them up for success. But again, like, we also want to do it on a case-by-case basis. For example, if there's a task that I know we decided, okay, this is going to be done at the end of next week. Let's try to check in around Thursday or Friday of this week again, just to make sure you're on progress and you're on track to complete it by the end of next week, as we discussed. And at that point, you might have more questions or clarification that you need to get from me, and then I'll be able to deliver that as well, right? And at the same time, again, with the technology that we have right now, a lot of things are actually still very convenient, right? We have Slack, we have Teams, many different apps that we can use. And we have an internship channel where everyone can just blast questions and share ideas or share progress updates. And whoever gets to see it first and is able to help or provide information or just acknowledge it, they're going to be able to do that. So we're still on top of that. And again, we are treating these people, we onboarded them because we see potential in them, obviously. We don't want to treat them like little kids as well. They're learning, but I expect them to display a level of maturity and professionalism. And another part of it is that, just as some of the other panelists said, some of the best practices that we are doing in the office, we can still implement virtually. So for us, that includes, performance review. Within the term of your duration of our internship, we're going to have a check-in where we're going to talk a little bit in details about how you were performing, what areas you need to improve on, what you have been amazing at, and, kind of help them also. Again, this is a developmental process for them as well. We want to provide them with that feedback. And then later on, at the end of the internship, we're going to do the same thing again and wrap that up. And okay, let's sit down and let's talk about what your career trajectory, what your plans are going to be. How has this experience benefited you? And how can I provide with, support or feedback so that you can continue to do better? And maybe, who knows, at the end of that, someone might be interested in extending their internship and we might feel the same way, or again, it might be a full-time offer at the end of it. Who knows, right? But again, these don't have to stop with us going virtual.
How much do you guys like that Kevin's covering one of those chat questions? I know Beth is gonna touch on that. Hey, what happens in the end here too, as far as giving feedback to them? Rebecca, what was the biggest challenge that you guys came across as far as managing and accountability your virtual interns at Fleishman Hillard?
I think you really have to try to, it's impossible to replicate the accountability that comes from just being able to walk by somebody's desk and just check in and see how their day is going. So making sure that day-to-day supervisors are empowered and really encouraged to make more active check-ins throughout the day and throughout the week than they typically would. Typically, supervisors might meet once or twice a week, but maybe that's, every other day or even in the first few days at home. Check in daily just to see how their project load is going, seeing how time management is in this new normal, and adjust accordingly. And I think the biggest challenge that's somewhat related to that is the check-ins that don't really have to do with, a specific assignment or specific task, because we know that networking is one of the most valuable parts of any internship. We really boast about that, frankly, is that we love that our interns get exposure to some of the best and brightest minds in the industry. And it can be intimidating even in person in that environment to stop by somebody's office and say hello or grab coffee. So to try to create that in a virtual environment, a virtual coffee can be extremely awkward and intimidating for someone who hasn't had any in-person exposure to that individual. So how can we make that less scary and let them know that we are communicating with our account teams to let them know and expect that they should be getting outreach from our interns, trying to schedule those virtual coffees, those virtual meetups, and making it clear to them that it's expected and people look forward to it. So really trying to eliminate some of the barriers and the awkwardness that come from it, just so we can try to replicate that networking as much as possible, so they feel like they're still getting those human connections that are just as important as the work that they are getting to touch as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do think that is very important. And we're all being challenged right now to do that with all of our work environments, but so critical with virtual internships. And so Colby and then Beth, I know Beth is going to try to field also this question about, hey, what happens at the end of this? But Colby, what about Evergy? What else have you guys learned about managing and then even kind of closing out that internship or those feedback loops with them, Colby?
Yep. So similar to Rebecca, our hiring managers and supervisors really do a lot of that daily management. So we didn't ever want to be in a position where our team, the talent acquisition team, was taking attendance and feeling kind of like that school marm, like checking in on them. So we really armed our small group leaders to kind of be our eyes and ears. So in those weekly small group meetings where they were more familiar with the people they were talking with, if they were noticing that the students were engaged or not attending, then we kind of knew who we needed to reach out to and see if there was an issue. So that was really something that we found to be highly valuable. And through the feedback from our interns at the end of the summer, they really appreciated those relationships as well. So having a current employee that they could ask questions to that wasn't their boss, having some peer interns that they could kind of bounce things off of, having just that safe space where they had an hour each week where they could talk was a huge gift to them in their eyes. And I'm sure that supervisors, if they had a chance to act on this question after having 6 months working from home, would probably do a lot of different things. But they did as well as they could with what they had at that time. So I really applaud them for the efforts and everybody, honestly, on this panel and trying to do virtual internships, because it's kind of one of those, you're figuring it out as you do it. And nobody's an expert. There's always something to learn. So.
Yeah, Colby, I think that's really encouraging for all of us to hear. You do what you can with what you have at that moment in time, and everybody recognizes that going in. We have to take this risk, and we do have to turn the tide and have more of these internships. So, Beth, how about silver linings, or again, kind of like closing out an internship, a virtual internship, Beth?
So yeah, I think all the other panelists really said it well. We didn't change our objectives or our goals for the internship, and we had to think, how are we going to accomplish this in a virtual setting? So from a feedback perspective, we had like a bit of a two-prong approach. It sounds like all the panelists, we all had kind of a similar approach to connectivity. We had our interns, and we would do this in a live format as well. We would have them in these mentor groups, and they'd have coaching teams mentored. Everybody calls it something different, but same idea. And we had them meet daily. For 15 minutes was the guidance, because then the interns knew every day at this time they were all going to get together with their coaching team as well as their peer mentors in their group, and they could talk about what happened yesterday, what happens tomorrow, what do you have on the docket for today, any questions they have. And then also the coaches were able to check in on the interns, and I think Colby kind of alluded to this, like seeing who's not engaged. Is there something going on? Should we check in here? The other thing we did was through our app, we sent out daily surveys to check in. How are you doing? Very quick, very similar to how you would see at a retail experience, the smiley faces or the frowny faces. So it was a very easy ask of the interns, but we were able to pick up on, okay, it looks like somebody's having a bad day. Maybe it's technology. Most of the time it probably was, because there was a hurricane that did hit in the summer, which was crazy. Or it could have been something else that was going on. Like, hey, they wanted to learn more about another group, but they didn't know where to start. Or as Rebecca said, that awkwardness of starting networking. So we're able to take a quick review. We had a lot of volume management issues here, but we had to quickly review what those responses were. And then we knew who to drill down and check in and say, hey, what's going on? That really helped us, because when we put ourselves in their shoes, they're sitting at home alone. They haven't met these people. They're not in our office. This is most of the time, this was their first time sitting in a virtual professional experience. So that really helped us, because we didn't sit on problems for 24 hours. We were able to really jump in and have that conversation. Most of the time, it was just a conversation that needed to be had. But I would say the amount of effort that involves was little compared to the effect that it had on the success of the internship.
Oh, that's great to hear. And Selena, we'll have you share just a little bit from your perspective again about being managed or being accountable. And team members, I am going to tell you that we just have a little bit of time left. So I'm going to ask you to also be thinking about, we're kind of going to popcorn very quickly around some of these ideas and questions that are being posed by the audience. So be thinking about even some of your last words of advice that you might want to give that could maybe answer one of these questions that we have from the audience, which I'll tee up here. But Selena, talk to us about, accountability and management from the interns' perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of the major ideas have been touched on already. The daily meetings and those processes to make sure you're aware of the projects that's going on and any priorities that need to either be followed up on. And I know my daily meetings with my team members, they kind of help me to plan my day. So I know what's the highest priority thing that I need to work on to the lowest priority thing that I need to work on. And then we also use the project management tool, Asana, and that helps just to keep track again of client projects that are happening currently, but then also just to also keep track of those longer projects that have the later due dates and things, just to kind of keep it in the back of my mind, like, okay, I need to start working up towards this project. And then we also use Slack for internal communication. And I use this to send my daily task list to my manager every morning. But then also just any other communication that's needed internally throughout the team. If I need a document that needs to be looked at, or if I need something to get approved. But I think from the intern side, is the most important thing is managing up and basically just making sure you're holding your manager and your other team members accountable for checking documents that they need to check, or going in and improving copy. And that just really helps to assure that the workflow is steadily moving forward.
Okay, so it's going to be a really quick, I'm just going to call you out for each of you as panelists. You have been tremendous today, but let's give one really quick word of advice, and it might be like an unusual way to connect people. People are looking for out of the box ideas about that. It might be something about how do you recruit virtual interns or anything else that we have out there. So Beth, I'm tossing it to you first.
Perfect. Okay. My piece of advice would be don't overlook peer-to-peer connectivity. So we were very much focused on the coaches and the staff and the partners connecting with their interns. They wanted to meet each other. So it's very simple to embed a trivia game with an open chat box. That does wonders, and it's practically free. DJ night, we had that too. That was really well received, and they were able to talk. We didn't even actually have to staff it. They just talked about things they were interested in. So one thing that really enhanced their experience was being able to interact with each other, because they went through the recruiting experience, but they didn't really know each other. So that would be one thing I would keep at the forefront of your goals and your objectives. That's
great. Colby, how about you? What's a great piece of advice? Oh, Colby?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Wait a second. My advice, just kind of going back to our challenge, was about equipment and access. And so I would encourage everyone to not assume anything about an intern's home life. Focus on the equity piece of the DE&I landscape and plan for ways for your student to be successful. So don't assume that they have great internet connection. Make sure that you have a plan to help them get that internet connection if they need it for work. Different things like that. So just make sure that we're giving everybody an equal chance at being successful.
Selena, how about you?
My biggest piece of advice would definitely be open, honest, and transparent communication between the employer and the employee, and making sure you're answering those questions. Like Kevin mentioned earlier, are we working up to par? Are we working up to speed? What areas do we need to improve on? What areas are we excelling in? But then also for the job seeker, just simply listen and go into it without rigid expectations. You may not see the value of the opportunity right away, but when you look back on the experience and you reflect on how the opportunity has added to your success and the positions you hold later, then you will begin to understand the value that it has had on you, but then also for your future career.
Very clearly stated. Rebecca?
My piece of advice would be for those seeking out internships. I think if you have feel like you're just waffling ever since May and looking for what seems like fewer and fewer positions, don't just let your hobby or your professional development be looking for internships or full-time positions. Do something for professional development, even if you can't find a formal position, but find some sort of hobby or something that interests you in your field that you can spend time immersing yourself in and getting smart in that specific topic or a subject matter expertise, because that's going to make a world of difference as more and more of these virtual internships and opportunities become available, to show that you've taken that extra step and made that effort to better yourself and further your professional development, even in this wonky time.
Kevin, you're going to get the last word. I'm just going to remind everybody to place into the chat. We've got a survey there that we would love to, again, hear your stories. We want you to stay connected. We certainly hope that if you could give a virtual round of applause to our panelists, you will do so, but that you will also consider joining us again on October 15th and November 10th, as we have more amazing, spectacular panelists doing this. Stay connected and make sure that you connect with us at debrief.org. And Kevin, what's our last piece of advice for our folks today?
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Just be a human, right? The fact that we're all meeting on a Zoom screen, whatever it is, doesn't have to stop us from being a human being and being a person, and be invested as a human being as well, right? Emotionally and as well. And whoever you're working with, whether it's your interns, and this goes both ways for both the interns and for the company managers and all the leadership people. Find out what people are interested in. Just because you're not meeting in person doesn't have to stop you from connecting as a person. When we're in the office, we go to happy hours and do all these bonding activities. That doesn't have to stop. And some of you guys have brilliant idea, like DJ nights and stuff. That's amazing. And if sometimes it doesn't even have to be as organized or something like that. If you find out someone likes baseball or something, they talk about that, right?
Thank you so much. I hate to cut you off, Kevin, but they're pulling us off the stage. Thank you. Wonderful day. Keep up the good virtual internships, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Bye.